During the Labor Leadership Challenge last year, Bruce Hawker, a high-profile former advisor to federal Labor, urged MPs to support Kevin Rudd. Mr Hawker's with me in the studio now. Good to have you with me.
Thank you, Lee.
At the time of the last Leadership Challenge, you said Labor had no chance of winning the next election with Julia Gillard as leader. Does that remain your view?
Well, the polls are really grim at the moment and they're continuing to worry me very deeply. I think it's going to be very hard for Labor to win, but we've got to be in there fighting, nevertheless.
Hard for Labor to win with Julia Gillard as leader, or hard for Labor to win full stop?
Well, I think it's going to be hard with Julia or with whoever would lead the party if she somehow, fell under a bus or whatever and wasn't available to lead the party. I think it's a real challenge now for Labor, but they have done well in 2012. They came back from a very grim position, actually worse than these polls are, to be about 50-50. So they've proved that they can fight and when they get onto the right issues, but it's hard.
Does she need to go, though? That was your view last year.
Well, that's a matter for the caucus. I'm not going to delve into that again. I had a view back then, and look, my view still remains that the most popular figure in the Labor Party is Kevin Rudd. That was borne out by the polling we saw today in AC Nielsen. But Kevin Rudd has said he's not going to be challenging. He's not going to accept a nomination.
Do you believe that?
Well, I do. I think he's made it pretty clear. It couldn't have been much clearer.
But come on, we've heard this before. We've been told this before, that Kevin's not interested in challenging, that it's not going to happen, and then it happened. So when things are looking as they are right now, well, who's to believe that he won't?
Well, I think you can only take him on his word. He said that he's not going to be challenging. I'm quite convinced that that's not going to be the case. That is going to be the case. He's not going to challenge.
Do you really think that he wouldn't accept a drafting if his colleagues came to him and said, we need you?
Well, he ruled that out yesterday, so we can only go on the basis of what he's saying. I think they've just got to work on the assumption that Kevin Rudd is not coming back, that ship has sailed, and they all went down and waved off at the dock and said thanks very much for all your help, and he's accepted that now. So it's tough for Labor. But that's the reality that we're dealing with now. So
if you work on that assumption, then what is the answer? Is it for somebody else to come up and replace Julia Gillard as leader?
I don't think so. I think they've got to knuckle down now and stay with the leader they've got. I think absent Rudd, any change in leadership would actually push the Labor Party backwards rather than forward. So
why do you say that? Because it could mean it's a circuit breaker from the whole Rudd-Gillard thing.
It could, but I think people would say, oh, well, we wanted Kevin Rudd, now you're giving us somebody else. There'd still be that sense of dissatisfaction among certain people out there. I think it would look much more frantic and desperate on Labor's part. As I said earlier, she's demonstrated that with a good coordinated campaign, they can actually pull back significantly on the opposition's lead. In September last year, I wrote a piece about how Labor was 50-50 in the polls and what they'd done then to make the opposition look pretty fragile, and that really came down to them focusing on real Labor sort of issues: the National Disability Insurance Scheme, the dental scheme, jobs, those sorts of things, plus some disunity in the Liberal ranks.
So what then is the answer for them, do you believe, at this point, to actually not even get within cooee of winning the election, just to absolutely make it not a complete wipeout?
Well, I think it's to do those sorts of things. The electorate would have genuine concerns about a lot of what Tony Abbott's got to offer. For example, he's got a record as being a minister in the Howard government. He's got a history of being the health minister that cut $900 million out of health funding. So he's got a story there that Labor can point to. So they have to look at that. They have to look at the alternative. Some of the things that he's been putting up recently, the 100 dams, it reminded me of the 100 flowers blooming, in the Maoist era, 100 dams filling with water. But, where are they going to be? We haven't had a major dam built since 1987.
But that is obviously, everything he says is resonating far more with the electorate than anything that Julia Gillard says. Let me ask you, do you think that Kevin Rudd's contribution over the past week has been constructive?
Well, I guess it's just sort of inevitable that people will talk about Kevin Rudd, particularly when you have polls that say he's the most popular Labor leader, past or present. Those sorts of things bring it back into the public forum all the time, and it's very difficult to avoid a discussion around that.
He has a role. as well, that he makes
does.
decisions about what he chooses to do. Do you think it's been constructive?
Well, I think so. I mean, he's been going around working in electorates, you know, today, yesterday, last week, next week. That's what he's been asked to do.
He's also been going around pointing the finger at Wayne Swan about what's gone wrong with the mining tax.
Yeah, well, I think there has been some talk out there that probably lends itself to that sort of criticism, but I don't think overwhelmingly that's the problem. I think there's still a perception out there in the electorate that Kevin Rudd was removed inappropriately. It was something of a political coup internally, and people don't like that. So I think that's just going to continue until the election. I don't think there's anything we can really do about it. I don't think there's anything Kevin Rudd can do about it.
Bruce Hawker, thank you very much for joining us tonight.
Thank you.